I always thought alphabets were pretty straightforward. 26 letters, A to Z, and that's it. You're done.
Right.
But then I learned about Serbian.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, this language, it throws the rule book right out the window.
It does.
Because it's got not one, but two whole alphabets.
Yeah.
And today, we're going deep into what that means, how it works, and why it's even more interesting than it sounds.
It really is. It challenges a lot of assumptions I think we have about language.
Yeah.
That we just take for granted that a language has an alphabet.
Right.
But Serbian shows us that there's more than one way to express yourself in writing.
That's what I love about these deep dives, total perspective shifts.
Love it.
So before we get into this double alphabet magic, let's set the stage a bit. What's the lowdown on Serbian itself? Where does it fit in the grand scheme of things?
So think of it this way. You might have heard the term Serbo-Croatian.
Right.
That's kind of the parent language. And Serbian is one of its standardized versions. It's part of the South Slavic family, which has roots going way back.
So it's got cousins all over the place.
Absolutely, yeah. And millions of people speak it, mainly in Serbia, but it's also official in Bosnia and Herzegovina and co-official in Montenegro and Kosovo. It even pops up as a minority language in a bunch of other countries.
Wow. So even before we get to the two alphabet thing, Serbian is already connected across so much of the world.
That's right.
But okay, let's get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Serbian is what linguistic whizzes call digraphic, right?
Yes.
Now, what on earth does that mean?
So digraphia basically means Serbian speakers use both the Cyrillic and the Latin alphabets.
Okay.
And not just for like a few special words, but like equally for everything.
Oh, wow.
It's not just like a historical leftover either. All literate Serbians today use both.
Wow.
We call this synchronic digraphia because they're used simultaneously, not one replacing the other over time.
Gotcha.
And it's incredibly rare to see with entire alphabets.
Wait, I need a second to process this.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that if I were to pick up a book in Serbian, I'd have to choose which alphabet to read it in.
Yeah.
And they both mean the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Okay, that's seriously cool.
Right.
But my brain is already doing backflips trying to imagine learning both. So how did Serbian end up with this dual alphabet situation? Was it some kind of epic linguistic debate?
It's more like a tale of two alphabets, each with its own origin story.
Okay.
First up, Cyrillic.
Okay.
This one might look a bit unfamiliar, but it was developed in the early 1800s by a Serbian linguist named Vuk Karadžić.
Okay.
His big thing was making the written language reflect the spoken word as closely as possible.
Uh-huh.
So Cyrillic in this case is very phonetic.
So if it sounds a certain way, it's probably spelled that way.
You got it. Each letter generally corresponds to one specific sound. Now, around the same time, a Croatian linguist named Judevi Gaj was busy developing his own system based on the Czech alphabet. And that's where the Latin alphabet for Serbian comes in.
So two guys, two alphabets, same time period. Were they collaborating or was this like a competition?
Here's where it gets really interesting. They actually designed both alphabets to have a one-to-one relationship.
Whoa.
Same sounds, just different ways to write them. It's like having two sets of keys that both unlock the same door but look totally different.
That is such a cool analogy.
Right.
It really highlights how two seemingly different systems can lead to the same result.
Yeah.
But it also begs the question, why have two keys in the first place? What's the cultural impact of having this linguistic double life?
And that's where things get even juicier. It's about more than just aesthetics. It's about identity.
Okay.
You see, Cyrillic often carries a traditional feel linked to Serbian history and culture. Think of it like seeing a beautifully preserved, handwritten manuscript.
Right.
You immediately know it's something special.
I get it. It has that weight of history behind it.
Yeah. Exactly. Whereas the Latin alphabet, while it represents the same language, has a more modern cosmopolitan vibe. Think glossy magazines or international news websites.
So it's almost like choosing between formal and casual wear. You wouldn't show up to a job interview in your pajamas and you wouldn't wear a ball gown to the beach. But in this case, it's about choosing the right alphabet for the right occasion.
Precisely. And what's really mind-blowing is that most Serbians can read and write in both alphabets fluently.
Yes,
They might have a personal preference, but they can switch back and forth effortlessly. Can you imagine being able to do that with any language that uses a different alphabet? It's like linguistic acrobatics.
Honestly, I'm still struggling to remember to dot my I's and cross my Y's. This is making my brain feel very inflexible. But so we've got these two alphabets, both totally legit, and people kind of just feel out which one to use. Are there any rules or places where this gets a little tricky?
Well, there aren't any official rule books on which alphabet to use when. It often comes down to personal preference, the intended audience, even the medium. You'll see Cyrillic more often in traditional settings, government documents, academic papers, things like that. Latin tends to pop up more in advertising, online content stuff geared towards a younger crowd.
It's like they're subconsciously saying, okay, this message needs to have a more traditional, authoritative feel. Better go with Cyrillic.
It's fascinating how much unspoken understanding goes into it.
Yeah.
But you're right, there are definitely areas where this system can get a little complicated. Think about search engines, digital dictionaries, even just typing on a keyboard, having to accommodate two alphabets can create technical challenges and even limit accessibility in some cases.
So it's not all sunshine and roses.
Well, every linguistic situation has its quirks. But even with those challenges, it seems like Serbian's two alphabets are deeply ingrained in the culture and identity of its speakers. And it really speaks to their adaptability and linguistic flexibility that they navigate this so seamlessly.
That's such a great point. I mean, imagine being able to effortlessly switch between two completely different ways of writing the same language.
Yeah.
That's seriously impressive. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the how of this dual alphabet system, but I'm really curious about the why. I mean, why do you think this has persisted for so long?
You've hit on a really crucial point. Language is never static. It's always evolving, and this dual alphabet system really highlights that. It adds a layer of complexity for sure, but I think it also adds a layer of richness and nuance to Serbian culture and identity.
It's like this dual alphabet situation isn't just about, like the mechanics of language. It's woven into the fabric of what makes Serbian, Serbian.
Exactly. It's a really powerful symbol of their heritage, their ability to adapt, and just like their unique place in the world.
Okay, I'm convinced. Serbian gets the most fascinating alphabet award for sure.
It's pretty cool.
But what about the language itself? Is it just as unique once you get past this whole double alphabet thing?
Well, like any language, it has its quirks. Serbian's known for having a pretty complex grammar.
Yeah. Lots of cases, verb conjugations, all those fun things that make language learners sweat a little bit.
I feel that pain. My high school Spanish teacher would back me up on that one.
But on the flip side, spoken Serbian has this beautiful, almost poetic flow to it. And the vocabulary itself is like a treasure trove of history.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Reflecting centuries of cultural exchange, you'll find influences from Greek, Turkish, German, a whole mix of others.
So it's like every word has a story to tell.
Absolutely. Each word is a little window into the past, reflecting all the different cultures and languages that have interacted with Serbian over the centuries.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like I knew next to nothing about Serbian before we started, and now I'm sitting here like, wait, why don't more languages have two alphabets?
I know, right? It really gets you thinking about the power and flexibility of language in a whole new way.
It really does. So if we had to sum up one big takeaway from all of this, what would it be? For me, it's that language is so much more than just a way to communicate. It's a living, breathing reflection of a culture's history, values, and identity. And the Serbian example with its two alphabets really brings that idea to life in such a tangible way.
So next time any of us sees Cyrillic or Latin, there's a good chance we'll think of Serbian. And remember that there's always more than one way to tell a story, even with something as seemingly basic as an alphabet. This has been amazing. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those brains curious, and remember, there's a whole world of fascinating language stuff out there just waiting to be explored.